go. Um, okay, that's. Good evening, everyone. Right. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hopefully you can hear me. If you can't hear me, it's you, it's not me, because we've just tried the system and it all works. So hope everyone is well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday evening. So this evening we are very fortunate to have Jane and Alex on from CNC Insurance, who'll be talking us through all things insurance. And Jane and I have worked together for probably best part of a decade, I think, long time. We've had a lot of done a lot of deals and stuff together, and Jane's always come through for us, except when I was trying to do commodities in Africa. I think that's the one time you weren't able, which is fair enough.
Sorry
Fair
about
enough.
that.
No, that's okay. That's fair enough. But yeah, all things property. Honestly, Jane and Alex are the people to speak to. But Alex is, I know you're going to be presenting. So I think if you share your screen and then I'll let you go forth and do your bit. And sorry, everyone, I am recovering. If I look a bit worse for wear, hopefully I look a bit worse for wear and not just this is my natural look. I'm recovering from a really bad stomach bug. So, um, hopefully, right. We are live. Okay, cool. Alex, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm Alex. I work alongside Jane in the property division at C&C Insurance Brokers. So this is just a little bit about our team and our company. So yeah, basically we are an independent broker, and I'm going to come on to that in just a second why that's an important point to know. But yeah, it's this is our team, and we work exclusively in property. So any kind of landlord insurance requirements, we are the go-to people and can talk you through the various different elements that are involved, and happy to give advice whenever we needed to. So, what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is a bit of an insurance checklist. So some people here will probably have already worked with insurance brokers before, but some people might not have. But if I was new to the game, this is kind of a little bit of a broad overview of what I think is important to know before you go in. And even some tips as well. If you've already kind of been with an insurance broker, some things to kind of refine how you work with it. So I'm going to be talking to you about why it's important, what broker you pick. We are not all equal. What you need to insure. There's a lot of different things out there that you can insure for, and it's a bit of a pick and mix for some people, and some people it's a requirement. So it's really good to know what's out there, what you can insure, what's required, and what's a nice to have, depending on kind of your portfolios. Rebuild cost assessment is going to be the big kind of issue we're going to be talking about today, as that's one of the biggest hiccups that people can come across. And if you get it wrong, it can have kind of like really quite severe impact on a claim. And then I'm just going to cover a quick overview of what kind of risks we can cover. We like to say that we can do it all, but there's a lot of different investment opportunities out there now, some very vanilla and some not so much. So we're just going to run you through what we can help with and what cover we can go through with that, because again it's not all clear cut, so it's good to just have a good overview of what's actually available to you and what's required and what's needed. So picking a broker. So as I said, CNC are an independent broker. There's a lot of brokers out there, and a lot have been bought up by bigger companies. And basically, depending on who you're with, some people will have schemes, some people will have certain insurers that they use. But because we're an independent broker, we are not beholden to some head office that's completely removed from us. We do exactly what the client needs. We go to the insurer that's got the best cover, the best premium, and we're not kind of beholden to any kind of commission agreements that we've got with them. We don't kind of get shoehorned into going with a certain insurer just because our bosses told us that's the one we need to go to. So basically, we pride ourselves on a client having the best possible outcome with us. That's what's important to us at CNC. So again, if you've got a broker or you're thinking about getting a broker, it's worth just doing a little bit of research, asking when they do a renewal, what's their process, because like you said, some people can be lazy and some people won't go to the insurer markets that you think or that we think you should be going to. So depending on how you approach picking a broker depends on what kind of best products you get as well. So it's definitely worth having a think. And if and anytime you need, even if you have a broker and you'd like to think, oh, well, I'm not quite sure if my policy is working best for me, you can come and have a conversation with us at any time, and no kind of cost involved at all. We're happy to give you our advice, or just some tips to go back to your current broker with, because like I said, good advice is good advice, whether kind of you're with us or you're not. And we'd hope that just generating that relationship with people kind of just follows through and drips down eventually. So this is a bit of a list that I've thrown together of cover that's involved with landlord insurance specifically. Most people just think of the building and the contents when they think about getting a policy, but there's actually quite a lot there that some people will get all of the above, and some people think, no, I only need buildings. So again, it's just important to know what's what. And if you do need extra bits, then we're totally happy and kind of capable of talking to you about all of them. But some people don't want all of them, and we will never force anything upon you. But it's just good to know what's out there. And again, yeah, if anyone's got any questions, there's time at the end if you want to ask what's what and what's actually involved in any of those. So the big thing that we are wanting to talk to you about today is reinstatement cost. So this is getting the rebuild of your property absolutely bang on. The next slide, it's this is a bit of an infographic that we've pulled from our partner, which is the rebuild cost assessment, and it's the figures kind of speak for themselves. That over 93% of properties are insured for the wrong amount, whether that's over insurance or under insurance. Both will impact you badly. You're either going to be paying more than you need to be paying, or under insurance means that if a claim happens, then basically you're probably going to be liable for a lot of the money yourself. And I'll go a little bit more into that at the moment. But yeah, those figures are quite shocking. And it's definitely one of the most important things to get right. The reasons why kind of costs are so volatile at the moment and hard to pin down are kind of energy costs, labour shortages, global supply chains, and environmental regulation. Now, without going too much into all of them and giving you war and peace, basically, the world is such a what's the right phrase of putting it? It's all got a bit to pot with so many things, and that's just having a major influence on cost of materials, although that has stabilised slightly. But the main one at the moment is construction labour costs. There's not enough people out there that can actually do the jobs. So inevitably, you're paying more for them. So what you would have paid for Mr. Builder to rebuild your property 10 years ago is nowhere near what it needs to be now. And the amount of people that don't think, oh, I need to reassess my rebuild cost because I had it done one time and I've got it now, it's quite scary. Hence why 93% of properties out there aren't on the right on the right basis. And it doesn't look like the world's going to get any simpler anytime soon. So our advice is a rebuild cost assessment should be done at least once every 3 years. Why it's important to get it done is basically this. I know this is going to look a little bit mathsy right now, but it's actually quite simple. Even I can do the math. So basically, if you're underinsured by a certain percentage, an insurer will look at your claim when it comes into their system and go, right, let's look at the rebuild costs. You insured this for X amount of money. However, following a bit of kind of research into your claim, your property is actually worth X amount. And they will do this little average clause. They will do this little bit of math here. So they'll take the sum insured declared by you and they'll divide it by the actual sum insured. So as you can see here, if only you're insured by 50% of your rebuild costs, then you'll be undercut. Your claim will be kind of reduced by 50%. So you will become personally liable. Your property will not be able to be rebuilt back to its point. So you'll either have to find other alternative sources of lending to get that money, or it's coming out of your own pocket. And in certain really severe cases, if you've underinsured it by a really kind of severe amount, sometimes they'll look to void your policy because it's clear that you've been a bit fraudulent. Obviously, there's obviously that's a very severe case, but this just shows you how important it is because it's your basically a lot of people's kind of cash flow and their personal finances. There's not many people that have that amount of money just sat around waiting to kind of be immediately used to put back into paying for their own thingy, especially if they've got insurance in place. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to get your rebuild cost bang on. And like I said, we do have a partner market, but there are many markets out there that can do proper ones for you, whether that's desktop or if you've got more of a complicated property, then people can come out and visit your property as well. So most of you will have heard of index linking, and this is kind of a method alongside every year to say, like, insurers say, well, we think the insurance market has fluctuated by X amount due to inflation, and then they will add that onto your sum insured. Again, it's completely up to you whether you accept that or not. You don't have to. You're obviously completely on your own prerogative to call your own building sum insured, but like I said, there are kind of if you don't get it right, then it will come and bite you on the bum if you have a claim. But index linking is kind of there to keep people honest in the interim of having rebuild cost assessments, but it's not something that you can only rely on. And again, if you kind of work on the fact that you're going to get one done every 3 years, this will kind of just keep you on the right basis in the interim. Again, another little tip, and that we get this all the time, is we say, oh, what's your rebuild cost? And people say, oh, well, I bought it for 250,000. Can you put it at that? And it's like, no, that has no bearing at all on what the correct rebuild is. Obviously, the market fluctuates a lot compared to anything else, but it has no bearing. About 10, 15 years ago, at one point, it was kind of similar, but even then we wouldn't say it was any kind of real bearing on what a rebuild cost is. So it's always worth doing that bit of extra digging to find out the rebuild cost, and having a surveyor kind of tell you, especially when purchasing. Again, if you haven't got that, we can help you out with that, but it's just something to bear in mind when you're coming to insure something, that's nothing kind of in relation to what we need in terms of information. This is a kind of just a bit of an example of when things can go horribly wrong and your whole property can come tumbling down. I believe this is one of Jane's claims that she had back in the day. Basically, a gas explosion happened in the property. So what you can see there is the roof is completely blown off. But this client was given the correct advice by us. The rebuild cost was done, and so it was all paid and settled, even though, obviously, as you can see, the damage was pretty complete. So you've kind of got to think of worst case scenario when you're insuring. There's that kind of devil on your shoulder that always wants to say, well, if I kind of undercut it, I might save a bit of premium in the short term, and that might help with cash flow. But ultimately, insurance is there when shit hits the fan, and you want it to be able to work as it's intended. We don't want to give an insurer any reason to go, no, we're not paying that claim. And that, as a broker, is our main job. We are obviously wanting you to get the right insurance, but we want to make sure when the claim does happen that your policy is going to stand up where it's supposed to stand up. And that's when we need that kind of give from you as well, to be completely honest about your sums insured. And if you're not sure, then we can help you with that. But we need that little bit of honesty to say, look, I need a bit of help with that, rather than picking a figure out of thin air. So this is a bit of a list of what kind of things that we've dealt with in the past. A lot of investments aren't your standard buy-to-lets anymore. We get a lot of kind of different tenant types. We get a lot of different building types, and we can cater to all of them. Not every insurer likes these, and that's why you need a broker that has these kind of relationships with multiple markets. And again, it's about that honesty. We get a lot of landlords that have gone from buy-to-lets to these more maybe profitable kind of types of landlord avenues now, but they don't necessarily think that that's important to let their insurer know. And again, if a claim happens and it's come out that actually you're a HMO, you've got asylum seekers in the property, you've lied about the construction, just because you think there are small details to you, actually they are facts that you've been given to an insurer, and on a contract basis they've told you a price. So if any of those facts don't stack up, then it could be that either your claim's completely repudiated, or it's kind of your claim's reduced, and either way those are things that we don't want to happen. So again, we can do all of these, quite happily, quite easily. But again, we just need people to be aware that these are kind of like material facts that matter. And the more you know, and the more you can let us know, the more likely we can tailor your policy to be absolutely spot on. Right. Another really important point that me and Jane come across all the time, and this is mainly for unoccupied properties or unoccupied properties that are undergoing renovation. So, a lot of insurers don't like this because you're much more likely to have a claim in an unoccupied property, or it's more likely that that claim is going to be bigger. For example, if you had an escape of water, you're less likely to spot it straight away, the damage is likely to increase, etc., etc. So, a lot of insurers out there won't offer what we call full all risk cover, which is this. Oh, I don't know whether you can see my thingy. So this is this side. So yeah, you want all of that covered. Ideally, most people will only offer what's covered called flea cover, which is fire, lightning, explosion, and aircraft. And obviously, that's a lot cheaper. So a lot of people get quotes for both and go, "Oh God, I didn't realise it was going to be quite as expensive for this unoccupied property. I'm going to go for the flea cover." And again, while that's totally your prerogative, and again, you're completely capable of saying that, and we will happily do that for you, I would like to say, how often have you had an aircraft fall out of the sky and hit your property? How often has your property been struck by lightning? Obviously, there are fires, but the main thing that happens is on to the side. Escape of water, actually, the biggest one. Um, but we would just like to, in a neutral environment when there's no quotes on the table, just think to yourself, are you just cheaping out at this stage because it looks nicer on paper, the pound signs are smaller? We want you to be protected at the end of the day. And when a client says to me, I'd just like flea cover, but I've got this unoccupied property, I'm going to be doing renovations for a year, I just think to myself, oh, like for the sake of a few £100s, is it not worth getting the full cover? Again, totally your prerogative. And everyone got the complete right to make their decision. I just think it's really important to understand what flea cover actually is, because people hear reduced cover and think, yeah, that'll work. But actually, the likelihood of you only ever having a fire is very slim compared to everything else. So just another important point to think about. And these are again just basically reiterating what I said before, what we can kind of achieve with full cover. Because yeah, like I said, a lot of insurance companies don't like to give full cover, but we do have the markets that will offer it. Like I said, it's usually a little bit more expensive, but that's because the risk is higher. So there's nothing that we can't really achieve. Sometimes if there's a claims history or there's been previous kind of, for example, subsidence in the area, then sometimes we might not be able to get those covers, but that's because there's a history, and we will always work as best we can to negate and mitigate any risks we can up to the kind of point of the highest point of protection that we can for you. And yeah, that's kind of really the main things I wanted to run with you guys. So if there are any questions, me and Jane are totally happy to answer them now, or if they crop up in the future, I've put my contact details on there for you. And yeah, I'm totally happy to kind of look over anyone's policy, give advice, or if there's any questions that you think about cover, whether it's useful or not to your situation. Yeah, you've got all my details there, and I am available most of the time. So yeah, feel free to give me a call at any time. And Jane, of course, I'm sure will be happy to do so as well. So yeah, I'll hand it back to Justin in case anyone or unless anyone has any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. So please do stick your hands up or type your questions in the chat. I've got sort of two questions as I have control, and
Go for it.
and a statement really. So the first one was, have you guys ever had an aircraft incident? Probably a question for Jane because I know she's been doing this a while. Um, the second one was a bit more serious, was when a property is unoccupied, so in other words, undergoing refurbishment, is there normally a time frame on that? So in other words, if we think, I don't know, we're going to be refurbished in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, is that going to change or materially change the type of cover we'd want to take out?
Yeah,
Um,
so I'll I'll answer quickly the renovation one first.
Yeah.
Aircraft, no, for myself. I'll let Jane. I don't. I assume Jane would have told me about an aircraft one because that would be pretty big news.
Yeah. I can categorically say there's been no aircraft claims
Okay.
in my 25 years experience.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go then.
Okay.
And in terms of the renovation, yes, when we kind of ask clients for details, basically we ask them to fill out a bit of a form because there's certain personal information that we need. And when it comes to the renovation side, when you're initially kind of planning for a renovation, we ask for the approximate time that you've kind of allocated. And again, that can chop and change. We're very aware. But initially, the planning
Yeah.
time, 3 6 months, how much you're being quoted for those works. So is it 20 grand? Is it 50 grand? And then the type of works is really important as well. So those are, I'd say, the three main things. Insurers want to know if it's kind of cosmetic only or if it's structural. And if it's structural, then basically we need a little bit more information on what that actually means, because insurers will base their kind of premium price on what's happening, because certain things are a little bit riskier, certain things are a little bit more kind of involved. So we'll just ask some more information and then we'll take it from there. And then if your build ever runs over, or you get to the point of the policy where you've said it's going to be 6 months and you've come to the end of the 6 months and you're still not done, we basically just extend the policy. And we just basically take it off your word. You go, right, I'm going to need another 2 months, I'm going to need another 5 months. And it's kind of a roll, it can be a rolling thing. So it's really flexible because we know that things change a lot. Things change a lot in property anyway, but especially with renovations. So yeah, it's definitely something that we initially like to have that initial idea so we can actually give you a price and a premium and a policy, but then that can be extended as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect. Thank you.
I'll just jump in on that. Yeah, so just to sort of summarize that, essentially, if you're just doing what most of the time you're doing, sort of a cosmetic refurb, so by that we mean nothing structural, that will always fit on a standard landlord insurance policy, but it will be just noted that the property is unoccupied, undergoing cosmetic refurb. If, however, you're tipping over the 50 grand, that's usually where we benchmark it, the 50 grand level worth of works, and say you're knocking out a few chimney breasts, extending it, loft conversion, etc. That will be a different conversation because the type of policy would change. We'd probably go on to what Alex was talking about, a project works type policy. So it really, every project is taken in its own merit, essentially.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then last, just a point, and then I know Kitty, who's actually Ian, and Anastasia have a couple questions. So the one thing I do want to state here is that water damage, or what do you call it, escape of water.
Yes.
We've had personal experience of that, and I don't know if anybody else here has, but it is ridiculous how quickly damage can occur from water. We had a case where, I mean, the guys must have left at sort of 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and this thing must have burst at about 1 minute past 4, and they walked back in. And it's just a little radiator pipe, and they walked back in obviously Monday morning, and I can't even remember how long it set us back, but it was a huge drama. So we've had real life experience of that. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that you do want to have covered. Right. So Ian, if do you want me to ask you a question? Do you want to go ahead?
No, just hi, Alex. Hi, everybody. I just want to ask him, when you were on about the rebuild, and obviously when you purchasing a property for X amount, and then the
Yes.
rebuild, how would you figure that out, or is that down? 'Cause obviously, I filled out online about obviously insurance for buy to let, and obviously I've just said the price of the property, and they've said this is what the rebuild will cost. But would the rebuild be more than what you've paid for it?
Potentially, it could be less, but like I said, it's never an accurate representation. So working out your rebuild, it should always be done by a professional in essence, because it takes things into account such as location matters, construction. There's so many kind of elements that all feed into it that the market value is just not an accurate representation. So when you buy a property, sometimes you'll get like a surveyor's report or a home buyer's report, and it should say in there, this is the rebuild cost, and it'll say this is the market value. So they're definitely two very separate things. However, not everyone always gets that. or it gets passed down from the previous buyer and previous owner of the property, and they say, "Oh, this is what we had it as." And again, it's not something to hang your hat on, because you're questioning, where did they get that information from? So if you ever find yourself in a position where you can't point to a document and say this is the rebuild cost, we would advise having a professional valuation carried out. And depending on your property, most kind of, I keep saying vanilla, most kind of standard construction things, they can have a rebuild cost assessment done via desktop. So you don't have to have someone come out to your property and physically walk around and do a huge report. Usually about 120 quid we can get them, those kind of more basic ones. Again, if you had a property that was listed or has a bit more kind of complex construction or kind of multiple tenant types, and sometimes a surveyor would need it to come out and physically do a report for you. But yeah, it's done by a professional. So it's either something that would be passed down from a previous survey, or something that you need to undertake yourself. And like I said, a surveyor's report that was done 10, 15 years ago, although spot on then, it's not going to be accurate now, just because of the way of the world. The costs have changed so severely, and they're only getting more expensive, that it's a good starting point, but it's not going to be as accurate as we need it or we want it to be for you.
Sorry, can I just ask
Thank you.
the demolition side of it as well? You say rebuild cost, but does it cover
Yes.
the demolition as well?
So
Because you got to
that's
take it
something
down
we
to
say
start it
should
again.
be all, because obviously the likelihood of a perfect poof of your property down to just a lovely nice flat bit of ground is never going to happen, or if it
No.
does, it's going to be very rare. So yeah, the whole rebuild cost takes into account debris removal, demolition, professional fees. So it's a mishmash of everything, and that's why you have to rely on a professional to do it, because the average
Yeah.
person's not going to be able to kind of put an accurate sum on that for you.
No, because I do know demolition gets just as expensive. Well, people don't quite
Yeah.
realize how expensive that is.
Yeah,
So,
especially if it's a terrace property, you've got to take into account like the location
cool.
around
Yeah.
you. It's very messy, especially when there's a big claim. So that's why it's really important to get the full picture.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Thanks. Anastasia, do you want to unmute and ask your question there?
Yeah, also just on that, I had a desktop valuation done on the rebuild cost as well. It's a property we bought for 142k, and the rebuild value came back at 450.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good example of how different it can be. That's quite a huge gap, to be honest. But yeah, that's a perfect example. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, my question is, so I work in the social housing space, and then when it comes to buildings insurance, has always been a bit of a challenge. So I now work with a social housing provider, and we've looked at their lease, which is a 5-year lease, and in there are two challenges. One of them that we were able to overcome, and one we haven't been able to overcome. So they're asking for 3 years loss of rent. So we need to get an insurance for that. So I don't know what I think what your experience is like. What's the default on the loss of rent with most insurers? And then the second one, they were, I guess, maybe cheeky to put a waiver in there for the subrogation. I've only learned recently that basically means if there's any issue because of their tenants, the insurer will not be able to take them to court. So the insurance broker that I'm currently working with, they've spoken to many of them, and 99% have said no, we're not going to insure this because of this waiver. Only one of them did come back and say, okay, we'll do it for 3,600 per annum. 3,600 was the only quote we've had. So this is kind of, for me, it's
an important point. Yeah,
it's an important. It's the good thing is we've managed to insure it on an untenanted basis, because we are almost for the past year we've been doing the refurbishment, but we're a couple of weeks away from actually getting it onto an tenanted one, and we've been searching the market and we are sort of at a loss. So I did go back to the to the social housing provider and raise it with their legal team, but that's where we're at the minute.
Okay, so I'll take loss of rent first. So this is I'll explain what loss of rent is to us, because there's two little things that are kind of out there in the market at the moment, and a couple of people get confused about them. So loss of rent is actually really easy to apply to a policy, and 36 months is just the indemnity period. So that can change depending on kind of what, if a lender is asking that for you, or a certain kind of insurer, that's totally fine. But loss of rent is basically when you work out how much annually you earn from a property. That is your profit. That's your kind of bid. That's what you like. It's a business, isn't it? That's what you make. So if you had a claim, and that meant that your property was uninhabitable, therefore your tenants couldn't be in there anymore, therefore you're not making your profit anymore. A loss of rent would then basically put you back in the position as if there was a tenant in there, so it still provides you that profit. So you're not going to be kind of going out of business, you're not going to go bankrupt in the meantime of that claim being put, your house being put back to where it was, so then you can get tenants back in. It's kind of like, I don't know whether you've heard of business interruption, but it's a way of keeping your business ticking over whilst a property has been put back into a spot where it can work as it should again. So loss of rent basically takes your annual rental figure, and then your indemnity period says, right, we're going to cover this for 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. And basically, again, this is depending on your property type. People can go for the cheaper side of going, oh, we'll just have it for 12 months. But it's always worth taking into account, and this is when you'd have that conversation with your broker, actually, what's the likelihood of our property getting back to a working, habitable location in 12 months? What kind of property is it? What are the materials? Is it just worth getting the 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months? So that's what loss of rent is. But some people are getting that confused with rent guarantee cover. So I don't know whether that's something that is that kind of what you thought it was, Anastasia, or is the rent, because rent guarantee cover is a slightly different thing?
No, that's what I thought it was. The challenge that I've encountered is that up to 24 months is pretty straightforward, but then when you go over that, some lenders are.
I find that interesting. I've never had an issue doing it myself, getting that 36 months cover. So I can kind of quite confidently say that that's something that should be able to be done quite happily.
I think what the issue is 24 months is given as standard, 36 months is suddenly chargeable.
Yes.
From a premium point of view.
Yeah, but if it's a requirement for someone kind of in your chain, it's not something that would necessarily be too much of an issue. In terms of the subrogation waiver, I think I'd need to kind of see exactly what they're saying, so I would know how that impacts what an insurer's point of view would be. Are they basically saying that they're not going to cover kind of any tenant damage, if like malicious damage, or I think I'd need to just have a little bit more information about what they're actually trying to subrogate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not the insurance company. It's the social housing provider that has it in their lease that should there be, let's say, you're not allowed to smoke in the bedrooms, and there is going to be a fire because a tenant smokes in the bedroom. So there is a claim. So the insurance has the right to go and claim against the provider because they were able to prove that they've smoked in the room, they were not allowed. So that waiver says you can't take us to court.
Got you.
Right. They are being cheeky.
That is cheeky. And I think we've seen a lot of cheekiness from a lot of different people recently. We've had a lot of kind of landlords come and say like, oh, they're saying they can do this, and then we kind of have to kind of put things into place. I don't know what your opinion is, Jan. If it's malicious, certain policies for certain tenant types, insurance put these caveats into the policy to say like, oh, we're happy to cover X, Y, and Z, but if this happens, we're not touching it. But that's when, as brokers, our kind of expertise and kind of range of markets come into play. There are going to be less insurers out there that are happy to cover it because, like you said, it kind of puts a little bit more onus on the fact that you're worrying, well, why have they got that in there? Is this something that happens a lot? There's something called malicious and accidental damage that some insurers don't cover for certain tenant types because they're seen as more risky. But some insurers out there will definitely do it. But like you said, the fact that you're aware of this and that you've brought it to your insurer's attention is a step number one. I would say you get brownie points as a landlord for even noticing it, because some landlords wouldn't have even known that, and then it'll come down further in the line. But yeah, there are definitely insurers out there that would do it, but it does come at a cost, obviously.
I mean, I am a little bit stuck on this issue. Maybe because I've taken your email address, maybe I can send the lease from the provider across and see.
I think that would be the most sensible thing. If I can see it in black and white, then I know exactly what they're asking, and I can get my insurers that do deal with this kind of thing more often and this kind of tenant type, and then we can go from there. And obviously, if we can help, we definitely will.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I'm in a position where it's going to be soon tenanted, and I don't have an insurance and cover that is happy with that clause in the lease.
Okay.
Yeah,
No
we're happy to discuss this further with you, obviously off the call. Can I just quickly ask, are they waiving the fact that it's not a full repairing lease?
It is a full repairing lease.
It is, but they're waiving any responsibility that if the tenant goes against what the rules and
the rules are,
yes,
regulations are, like you say, they light up a cigarette and then they're saying, well, we can't control that, so would it still be covered? Right, I've got my head around it. So yeah, we'll speak offline about that.
Yeah, pop us over an email and send us the lease, and yeah, we'll jump on that for you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then I don't know if you guys can see the chat. There was a question there from Gareth. I don't know which Gareth. There's a few Gareths. Just asking about landlord liability. Obviously, there's actually really two questions there, i.e. accidents and incidents on site by tradesmen and tenants.
Yeah.
So yeah, you go ahead.
Absolutely. So it's kind of got a few names out there. Different people refer to it as different things: property owners liability, landlord liability. But yes, it's covered pretty much as standard. Again, the limit type can vary. It's usually 2 million, 5 million, or 10 million. And like you said, it's there to kind of cover any negligent act from you as a landlord. I always give the example: if a tile falls on someone's head while you're at the property, because technically it's your responsibility to make sure that property is kind of not going to cause any accidents to anyone. But yeah, it's very standard. In fact, if you didn't have it, it would be odd. So it's usually quite cheap. And again, depending on the kind of property type, 2 million is probably a quite standard amount. 5 million, we sometimes do 10 million as well, but that's usually more for commercial sites where there's more kind of footfall. You're more likely to have more people there. The kind of activities always come into account. So if it's a commercial type, obviously if it's a car manufacturer, if there's lots of things going on, then we would say get the higher limit. But again, if it's just a standard buy-to-let with just a normal family in there, kind of 2 million would be perfectly acceptable. But yeah, it's very standard, and yeah, it's not an expense massively compared to the other kind of covers.
Agreed. And I don't want to sort of sidetrack too much, but obviously tradesmen working in your property is a whole different ballgame. That's not landlord liability. That's CDM. They need to have their own insurance.
Yeah, a lot of when you have different people involved with their own different insurances, it's easy to get confused about kind of what policy looks after what thing. But as a landlord, you're kind of, if you just think of yourself as someone like a legal entity, you've got to protect yourself. Yeah, property owners' liability is what protects you from any kind of, say, like if I don't know, you had a broken something that someone could trip over, where technically if you'd have fixed it they wouldn't have been able to, little things like that. And it's always come down to negligence. So yeah, obviously if someone just hurts themselves or on your property and it's complete fluke, then that's life, unfortunately. But yeah, landlord insurance just cover you from those kind of negligent items that crop up every now and again.
Perfect. I'm not sure if anyone has any other questions, but one thing I will say, and please, Alex, Jane, correct me if I'm wrong here. Your broker, in terms of insurance, is actually quite similar to your finance broker. You want to be speaking to them from an investor perspective when things are changing, okay? Don't just sort of leave it and then hope it'll be okay. If we'll go back to the example of the refurb. The refurb is scheduled to take 6 weeks, and all of a sudden it's going to take 9 weeks. it's not going to kill you to send a 30-second email to your insurance broker and say, does this affect my policy? Do I need to be thinking about this from an insurance perspective? And I would highly recommend you do that, because the last thing you need is, well, actually, you're only covered for a certain amount of, you have a cost overrun. And now, as Jane rightly said, now you've gone over that £50,000 and all of a sudden there's some sort of damage in the property. And now you have a problem because you weren't insured, because all you could have done was just sent an email and it would have been problem solved. So yeah,
100%. Music to our ears, Justin. Yeah, the more proactive and honest you are, and just bounce stuff off us. Even if it doesn't amount to necessarily a change that we have to make, just that's that communication. Like, use us. That's what we're there for.
yeah.
And also something that's just made me think of what you've just said, Justin. When you're looking at buying a property, we get a lot of people now that come to us, and certain locations, flood cover is getting more and more of a hard thing to gain in some locations. And sometimes people are already bought their property, or they're completing on it tomorrow, and then we're running it through their system for us, and we go, oh God, it's pretty much nigh impossible to get flood cover. Or then you're automatically then kind of having to get these really expensive policies. So I would say if you have a broker, it's always worth just saying to them, like, oh, I'm thinking about this property. Is there any way you could just run a really basic kind of thing through your system to see if flood cover is going to be an issue or not? Again, it's not a reason to not necessarily proceed with a sale, but I think just kind of having that kind of knowledge before you're kind of already kind of, it's already happening, can maybe kind of, change your perspective on whether you go through with a sale or not. I think that's a big one that I've seen, that a lot of our clients all of a sudden think, oh bugger, I didn't know that. They're looking at the kind of investment of it and the potential, rather than because flood when it happens is horrific, and it's only ever going to get worse, likelihood, the way everything.
Because haven't they changed? They've changed the parameters around flooding, certainly over the last 10, 12 years that we've been investing. And I mean, we have a live example that you guys, you've done the policy for, where when we bought it, there was no issue. But whilst we've owned it, they've gone and built like 70 houses down the road, which has now created a floodwater risk that wasn't there when we bought the property, if that makes sense.
It is really
surface water risk. That's right, because of and I mean, we dealt with it, and it was a couple quid extra and whatever. It wasn't deal breaking by any stretch, but I mean, these things
it doesn't automatically mean it's a no-go, but like you said, things change year on year. Different insurers have very, very, very clever databases now, especially with kind of surface water flooding, kind of like the storms as well. And like you said, we've had properties that have been covered for years, and then all of a sudden insurers goes, well, now it's fell into this red zone and now we're not willing to cover it anymore. Or it's shot up, the excess has shot up, and those situations obviously we can't ever predict, but before you buy a property, it's worth an email, like you said, if you're ever kind of, it's on your radar, but you're not necessarily kind of fully committed to the purchase. Feel free to ping something over, and I've got no issue with doing a little bit of digging for you.
No problem. I know exactly who you're going to get an email from. I'm not going to say it on the call. They're not on this call. I know, because we had this conversation on. No, I'm terrible. I'm just like, okay, how much is it? Yes, we'll pay it. I mean, I don't look too much. Andre, my business partner on the property side, looks in it. But we are having this exact conversation around flooding about 10 days ago. So I know someone's going to be messaging you because he's going to watch the recording and then go, I'm coming for you.
There we go, I'm doing it. But I'm glad if it can help someone just be a little bit more aware. Or I'm not saying I want to ruin any purchases for anyone, but like you said, it's good to know these things. Forewarned is forearmed. So
it's the one, it might have a 0.5% chance of happening, but a catastrophic outcome if it does happen. And actually to just insure for that possibility is not, it's very straightforward, generally quite cheap.
It's good to
never
know,
going to, very rarely going to be a deal breaker. So I mean, if insurance is a deal breaker within the mechanics of a deal, it probably wasn't a deal to start off with, if that's the small thing that's going to break it.
You don't want to buy a headache without knowing what that headache's going to be. I think it's good to know what you're prepared to put up with, isn't it? So and thank you for the email, Anastasia. I've just seen your message. I'll check that out shortly.
Amazing.
Right, perfect. Well, if there are no further questions, then we can all go and enjoy our Wednesday evening. Thank you all for jumping on. Jane, Alex, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
I
you for
really
having us.
appreciate
My
your
pleasure.
time. And yeah, your details are there. If anybody, for whatever reason, doesn't have them, drop me a message. I can send you Alex and Jane's details. So thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great evening, and we'll speak to you soon. Oh, sorry, shout out. If you are able to, next week, Wednesday evening, anybody who hasn't confirmed is our in-person networking event, Central London. Details are on school. I think most of you seem to have said you'll be there. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go and check out the post on school. And hopefully we'll see you there next week. Kerry, to answer your question, within 24 hours. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay. Super. Thanks, everyone. Cheers
Thank
and
you,
have a good
guys.
evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.